It says sharing is not turned on. Okay. Okay. What do you guys see on my screen? Okay. All right. All right. Ladies and gents, hope you had a good one yesterday, and I hope you were able to practice. So today, we're gonna be doing some HackerRank challenges. So if you don't have HackerRank, please just go to Google and search for HackerRank, and then what's this? If you don't have an account, obviously, please open account, and this is what we're going to be working on today. So once you are signed in, search for algorithms, and then it will take you to this page. Right. So um, I don't know if should I wait for everyone to be ready, or I should just dive in. Yeah, maybe let me give everyone. We'll officially start at uh 10 past 9, right? So I'm just gonna give everyone a chance to sign up and etc. etc. All right, so I'm gonna mute my mic now.
Sizwe, it's 10 past 9.
Yep, 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 yep. Is everyone good? Just thumbs up, hands raised. Okay, I'll assume everyone's good. So, uh, uh, let me see. Okay, this one so it's just easy. So we're gonna start with a simple sum array, right? So you just click on solve challenge. Is everyone good? Okay, so once you're in this page, How do I remove this thing? Okay, mhm, yeah, that's better. So you just go here and you select the language that you want. We're gonna select JavaScript JS, right? Okay, so and then just scroll down and look for the function simple array sum. Okay, so once you got that, this is where we're gonna write our code, right? Forget about everything that you see here. Just focus on this part where it says write your code, right? So now that we are squared away, uh, let's go through the problem. So it says that given an array of integers, find a sum of its elements, right? I'm reading here. This is the problem. And then, for example, if the array is 1, 2, 3, we need to sum up all these elements and return a sum. So if we say 1 plus 2 plus 3 is equals to 6, so we return 6, right? And then let's look for maybe for the instructions complete some array function for the following parameters, wada. And then input format, the first line contains an integer denoting the size of the array, etc., etc. Okay, right. So they just talking about the input here, but the input as I see here is an array, right? So okay, yeah. And then sample input, so this is the length of the array. So the array will have 6 elements inside. And then so this is an example, right? So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11 inside our array as elements like this, when we sum up the whole thing, we need to return a sum, and that sum is 31. So from this array, we should expect 31, right? So this is basically an explanation. So using what we already learned yesterday, let's try to solve this problem, right? So defining the problem, we've already defined the problem that we need to sum the elements in the array. So our first step, obviously, we need to have a sum. We need to have a sum variable, right? Which is basically responsible. Um, I wouldn't say it's a counter, but uh, it's responsible for giving us the total, or rather holds the total, right? So we need that. And then obviously we're gonna have to iterate inside the array, right? So with iteration, it means loops, right? So we need to iterate through our array, and then some elements in the array, right? And then lastly, return some. So as you can see, even before I write the code, I need to make sure that I understand the problem, and then I solve the problem before writing the code, right? So you need to remember this. I remember software development or programming is it's 10% writing code, 15% debugging, and the rest of the whatever's left is problem solving, right? So now sum variable. So we'll declare variable called sum, and then let's iterate through our array. So for this, we're going to use for loop. and then we're going to initialize it to, we're going to have our I index or I or counter, and then we're going to initialize it to 0, and then we're going to say if I is less than array dot length, right? But I forgot an important step actually. We don't know what array looks like at this point. We just assume, right? So I would advise for you to check what what the parameters are, right? Remember, because at any point here, it does not tell you what are the arguments, right, that are passed into the function. So we just have a parameter here. So I'm just gonna console log it, the value of this parameter, just to see what we're working with. And then I'm gonna click on write code. Right? So because we're not returning anything, obviously the answer is wrong. And so this is where we are expected to see our return, right? But because it's undefined right now, because we don't have a return statement inside of our array. So um, so for now, we're not going to look at your output. We're going to look at the debug output. So this is the array. This is the array that we're working with. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, right? So okay, we know that we're working with an array. So right now we can safely verify. I got we've assumed, now we verify that indeed we're actually working with an array. Right. So now let me continue with my loop. So I have the first step, initialization. Now this is our condition. Now let's have our iteration right here. Because I don't want to skip anything. I want to go I want to go through each element in the array. So I will increment by 1. All right. So um now we'll say that sum equals to array dot I, right? Now I can assume that I'm doing the right thing, but let me just console log to ensure that indeed we are summing all the elements inside the array. So when you're starting in programming and sometimes you're not sure what you're doing, like I've mentioned, it's very good to use this statement. This statement is very powerful. It will save you a lot of time, and sometimes we assume that we know code, but the truth is code will show you flames. And it will trap you if you are not careful. So just use console log just to see where you are in the code, right? Um, so I'm just gonna run this. And so in the first iteration, we have 1, then we have 3, then we have 6, then we have 10, then we have 20, and then at finally our total is 31, which is our expected output. So good. Our sum variable is our loop is doing what it's supposed to. And now we can finally remove this, and then we can return sum like that. Let's just run code. Right. So that is all good, right? Neatly done. All right. So now let us go. So remember now the code that we write must pass all the test cases, right? So what I'm going to do now, um, um, let's go back.
Caesar, are you still sharing your screen?
I don't know what happened here.
Yeah, we can't see your screen at the moment. Yes, Vokona, your hand is up.
I think there's another way to tweak it from the code, but there is simplest way. There's a section where you can actually insert your own custom inputs. When we go back to the screen. I'm not sure if Caesar is still around.
Okay, we seem to have lost Caesar. Maybe he has some connection issues at the moment. So can we give him a few minutes so that he can rejoin? In the meanwhile, Vokona, do you want to take some questions from the participants?
Yeah, I'm good to go if they do have any questions.
Okay, if you do have a question, you can just raise your hand up. Okay, we have a question from Luvuyo. Nakwanda, can you please unmute Luvuyo?
Okay, it seems like we cannot unmute Lavoya right now. Lavoya, can you send your question on the Q&A and then I'll probably reply.
I think that goes for everyone. If you do have a question, you can just type it in the Q&A and then we'll answer you while we're still waiting for Caesar to join in. Okay, I think yeah, Lavuyo is here. Bukona. Morning,
Hello,
Lavuyo.
Fana,
How are
can you hear
you?
me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we were busy with HackerRank, and then I saw debugging over there. So are there any principles in debugging that you should follow, or is it complicated, or is it just as simple as just fixing where you went wrong?
Um, it is actually complicated. It also depends on how huge your code base is. So as you can see with when Caesar is actually writing code, he actually double checks with each and every 3 lines or so, right? But if you are the kind of coder who writes a whole page before you actually try to run it, when you now have to debug, it's actually going to be more complicated compared to what he is actually dealing with. So in a real life project, you'll find that the flow of the debugging process actually needs to be a bit more formalized. So there's a top-down approach and then a bottom-up approach Those are things that you guys might actually need to research. We don't have enough time to cover those, but look at bottom-up debugging and top-down debugging. It is complex, but we always recommend that if you have a function, obviously in a huge code base, make sure that whatever you're writing in that function, you debug that section alone. If it's 5 lines, debug everything, debug the inputs, just like Caesar did, to verify that you're actually getting inputs that you think that you're getting. So your assumption sometimes is not always correct. So use your assumption to make sure that everything is verified. Okay, I am actually getting an array. In the array, these are the values that I'm getting. When you are done, you've done your whole sum, double check that it is actually the correct one. And then the last thing, you have to double check it against multiple values in an array. So don't just check it against one array with maybe always fixed values. That way you may make sure that the function is actually always going to be functional, regardless of the size of the array, regardless of the values in the array.
Thanks for that, Vukona. I don't know what you guys are talking about, but thanks. Sounds like you were cool.
All
Um,
right, welcome back.
Thanks for holding the fort. I am back. Okay, I just had network issues on my side. So I don't know what Vukona said. I don't think he was lying, but the next step is okay, I'm looking at this array, right? And okay, I think that there's another way that we can solve this. It might be a bit a bit complex for you guys, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to show you something. So, um, the next step basically is optimization. So when you're writing code, initially you write code and make sure, so you write code and then you solve a problem. So you ensure that the problem is solved and the code is working. Now, the next step is for you to optimize and refactor your code. The reason we refactor and optimize the code is because to avoid the code execution time and to make sure that the code is clean and readable and scalable as well. So sometimes you'll be working in teams and then you find that your team members cannot make sense of your code, or the code is just not scalable, or it's not, I don't want to use a bad word like terrible, but you just write code to make it easier for your team to know what's going on and build on top of your code, right? So that's why every time I remove console logs, because you don't want them to be confused as to, when they see a lot of things on the terminal and they don't understand what's going on, right? So right now I see something that I think that or rather, we'll do that later, actually. Let's leave it like this. It's simple, it's clean enough. But yeah, okay, it's fine. So this code, before I lost network, it passed all our test cases, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so we're good to go. So now let's do another problem. Uh, let's do compare triplets, right? I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute to read the problem, and then we're gonna get started. Okay, is everyone done? Okay, cool. So we have Alice and Bob. Each created one problem for HackerRank now. Now a reviewer rates the two challenges from Alice and Bob, awarding points on a scale from 1 to 100 for three categories: problem clarity, originality, and difficulty, right? So the rating for Alice's challenge is the triplet okay. A is equals to bracket and And the rating for Bob's challenge is the triplet B is equals to da 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 da. Okay. The task is to calculate their comparison points by comparing each category. So, if Alice, okay, if A is greater than Alice, then if A is less than Bob. Okay. So what they're saying is that if Alice has scored more than Bob on one of these three categories, then Alice is awarded 1 point. And then if Bob scores more than Alice in any of these categories, then Bob is awarded 1 point. And then if the scores are the same, then neither person receives a point, right? So then we have an example, which is array. I'm guessing that A is for Alice, B is for Bob. And then from this, we can see that on the first elements, right? Comparing the first elements, Bob is awarded a point because 3 is greater than 1, right? And then the second element is for equal elements, no points are earned, right? Because 2 and 2 are equal. And then finally, 3 is greater than 1. So that means Alice receives a point. So now, okay. Okay. So once the comparison is done, we need to return an array for Alice, the total points Alice accumulated and the total points that Bob accumulated, right? So yeah, return an array with Alice's score first and Bob's second. Okay. So another example is this. So this, okay, MB. Okay, so our sample input means that we have two arrays as our inputs. This is our first, which is for Alice, and this is the second, which is for Bob. So we have two inputs, right? Hence, we have A and B as defined as our parameters. Now, let's see. Oh, so Alice scored more than Bob here. So Alice is 1. They are the same. So neither gets a point. And then Bob scores more than Alice. So it's 1. So hence the 1, 1 here. But remember, this 1, 1 should be an array, right? So don't get confused. I almost got confused. So then the explanation of the example says that the first point, Alice receives 1 point, then nobody receives a point, and then Bob receives a point. Hence, we return the array 1, 1, right? Let's look at another example. Here, Bob scores more than Alice. And then the second one, Alice scores more than Bob. And then Alice scores more than Bob again. So Alice has 2 points and Bob has 1. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. So let's try to Okay. So let's see what we're working with. Our assumption that these parameters are arrays, but let's just confirm. Okay, there we go. They're both arrays, right? All right, so it's just going to remove that. And then we need to have an array where we store our score. So we need to have score array. And then we need to have a variable to check Alice's score for Alice and Bob's score. So it's two variables for Alice and Bob. And then since we need to go over each element in the array, so we need to iterate over the array. But which array? Because there are two arrays. So for this comparison, according to the problem, according to the problem statement, for this comparison to work, Alice and Bob, the array for Alice and the array of Bob have to be equal, right? So if they have to be equal, then we can just choose one array to iterate over, right? So yeah, we'll just choose one array to iterate over and see what happens, right? And then obviously, once we iterate over the array, then we need to compare elements in the array. And then, if Alice scores more, then award Alice. If not, award Bob. No, but no. Alice scores more than award Alice. If equal, award no one. And then if not, then award if not equal, and if Alice is scored less, then award Bob. Okay, this makes sense in my head. So let's write. Okay. So let us have an array where we're going to store our scores, and let's have Alice score 0. Then let's have Bob score. And then iterate over the array. So I'll say let I is equals to 0, because we want to start with the first element. And then say let's choose Alice's array, and then we increment, right? And then compare elements in the array. So we will say that if the elements inside of Alice, if any element inside Alice's array is greater than any element, okay, not any element, but yeah, elements inside of Alice are greater than Bob's elements, right? So basically what's going to happen is when we iterate, just like I showed you an example, is we're going to first start with the first element, right? So if if I is equals to 0, we'll start with the first element inside the array. So we'll say 17 is greater than 99. No, that's not true. So we'll award Bob. And then when I is 1, we go to 28 and 16. And then when I is 2, we go to 30 and 18. If you're confused, let me show you what I'm talking about. So comment that out and just console.log. So let's see what the elements inside of Alice look like. And then let's see what the elements inside of Bob looks like, right? Hmm? I hope that makes sense. So Bob and Alice elements, element for element, right? So 5 and 3. So we're going to compare 5 and 3 first. Then we're going to compare 6 and 6. Then we're going to compare 7 and 7, right? You guys see the power of console. So now that we have an idea of what's going on, now I can let me uncomment that out. And then I'll say that if any element inside of Alice is greater than Bob, then I will award Alice like this, Alice plus plus. And then if it's not greater, then I would award Bob. So at this point, I'm not checking if it's equal, if the elements are equal, because either way, if they're not equal, I'm not adding or subtracting. So it's at this point, I'll just decide not to use or rather to have a check whether they're equal, because even if they're equal, what happens? I'm not subtracting or I'm not adding. So we'll just leave it like that. So if the elements in Alice are not greater than Bob's, then we score Bob, right? And then we exit our loop, and then our let's check Alice score, and let me see Alice. Let's check Bob, and I'll say Bob. Okay. So Alice is 1, Bob is 2. Let me see. Alice is 1. Why is Bob a 2? Oh, actually, I should have added an if-else statement. Okay. See? Code. You think you know? Humbles you. Okay, so what's happening here is that here I'm checking if Alice is greater than Bob, right? And then if Alice is greater than Bob, we award Alice. And then what this code is basically doing is that it says if they're equal, if Alice and Bob are equal, or Bob is more than Alice, then so Bob scores twice, because if they're equal, then he scores. So I need to add an if-else statement to say that. So I need to add the check after all to say that if Alice is less than Bob. And as you can see, the power of console log will always help you to understand what's going on in your code. So now, yes, now Alice is 1, Bob is 1, and our expected output is 1 on 1. But we're not done, right? Why are we not done? We need to put these scores inside an array, starting with Alice and then following with Bob. So for that, I'll just reassign the variable score like this. So I'll say Alice and Bob. And then Right, I'm gonna run my code. And then, so we passed the provisional test cases, but now let's submit code to see if we're passing all of them. Right. So our code is good, right? We can refactor this, but for larger arrays, right? Mhm. Hmm. Okay, if we're gonna refactor this, let me just comment this out. And then let me just say return Alice Bob. Just remove extra lines of code that are not necessary. Let's submit code again. Yeah. So just remove that. Just remove that because we don't need that. Then let's see. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go to the next one. As you can see, as I'm going through all these problems, I'm gaining points, right? So, oh, I'm ranked what? 3 million. Damn. So my points 20. So let's solve a very big sum. Okay. Again, giving you 1 minute to read through the problem and then we'll begin. Okay, we are back. All right, so what is the problem? In this challenge, you need to calculate and print the sum of elements in the array, in an array, considering that some integers may be very large. Oof, I hate this. Okay. So the function description, we have the following parameters. We have an array of integers. Okay. So this confirms that we are expecting an array, right? So this is an array. We don't have to console to verify that. And then return the sum of array elements. So, okay. in this challenge, you need to calculate and print the sum of elements in an array, considering that some of the integers may be very large. So we are expected to return a sum of the elements in the array, okay? Straightforward. Oh, okay. So an example would be that the input, so it's an array of length 5, and then these are the elements in the array. As you can see, they're very large numbers. So yeah, sheesh. Okay. But the problem is also very straightforward. It's kind of like the problem that we solved before, at the beginning. However, the only twist here is that these elements or integers in the array quite large. So, but let's not despair. Let's see what we're working with. So because we did a problem like this in the beginning, I won't rewrite our steps. We already know what we should do. So we have our sum variable. And then because we have to iterate, we're going to use our for loop. Initialize I to 0, and then I should be less than the length of array, and then we're just gonna increment, and then we'll say sum. Oh, today's garbage day. Okay. Like that. Let me just confirm if we're doing the right thing. Let me not get ahead of myself. Because code will humble you very much. Okay. So we're still good. Expected output, right? Okay, seems fair. Now I'm just gonna return our sum. Just run code to verify. Okay, we pass our provisional test. Now let's please pass. Okay. So our code is a success. It passes. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Get earned. Okay, whatever. So let's refactor this, right? There's a very interesting array method that we're going to use. And this method, for you to get this method and use it, it's going to take years, not years, but it's going to take a lot of practice. Yeah, even some developers who are accomplished, sometimes they struggle with this with this method. So what we're going to do is we already have some declared, right? And assigned to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to say sum, we're going to reassign sum, and we're going to say array dot reduce, right? And then we're going to have a callback function. Then we're going to have what is this? This is a parameter, accumulator parameter. Then we're going to have a current value like this, right? And then this is a callback function, like I said. And then we're going to have ACC, which is accumulator, plus the current value. And then we're going to have like, what is this? Command and 0. So what is going on here? All right, so let me just explain. So instead of writing a for loop like this and then having to iterate again, we're using a JavaScript. This is an array method. Reduce is an array method in JavaScript, right? So basically, it is used to reduce, and I say this in quotation marks. It is used to reduce an array to a single value, right? And in this case, the single value will be the sum of all the numbers in the array, right? So so now we have a callback. So basically, in this array method right here, this is basically a function, right? Function, I mean, a method is another way to say function. In this method right here, this reduce method, we have two arguments. The first one being a callback function. And the second one is the initial value of the accumulator, right? So what's going on here is that our accumulator initially set to 0, like this, right? Is initially set to 0. And then our current value is the current element being processed in the array. So so if you have something like for example, if we have something like array is equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, no? According to the definition that I gave you, initially the accumulator is 0. The current value is 1, right? Being the first element, right? And then what happens inside the reduce method is that we're going to say 0 plus 1, right? And then accumulator now becomes 1. And then we repeat the entire process. So now accumulator is 1, and then current value is 2. So our accumulator is 1 and current value is 2. This becomes 3, right? So accumulator becomes 3. So our accumulator is now 3 and the current value is now 4. So let me see. No, it's not. It's 3. Yo. So accumulator is 3 and current value is 3. And then now our accumulator becomes 6. Injalo, kanjalo, kanjalo, you know? Then now accumulator is 6, and then current value is finally 4, and then your 6 plus 4 is 10, right? So then this is the number that we are going to, what is this? Then 10 is the number that we are going to return because we don't have any more elements in the array. So the final current value is 4. So therefore we cannot iterate any longer. And that is basically the basics of what is this? Reduce, right? So okay, I'll just leave that. And then so let us log what's happening now and ensure that this is correct. Okay, so this is still good. We didn't break our code, still fine. So now I can return sum. Let's run our code. Okay, we passed the first test case, and then we're passing all our test cases. Notice on the second time, it didn't take time to run. It just did it quickly, right? Just just notice that, and that's why sometimes optimizing your code, not sometimes, that's why optimizing your code, most of the time, all the time, is very, very important, right? So this was our initial solution, but instead of using one, two, three, four, five, 4 lines of code, we just use, 2 lines of code to solve our problem. And if you are arrogant, if you're an arrogant dev and you're lazy, you can just make it 1 line of code like this. And then let's see what happens. And still pass out 10 test cases. Okay, not that you're arrogant, but you know what you're doing. You know your story. So now we solved this problem in 1 line of code. As you can see, this looks neat, looks beautiful. If I see this code, I'm like, whew, I'm working with a serious dev. All right, now let's go to the next problem. Diagonal difference. I'm gonna give you guys 1 minute again to read this problem. Oh, actually, I just realized that it's 10 now. So that means after this problem, we'll just take a 5 minute break. All right, we're back. Um, so given the square matrix, calculate the absolute difference between the sums of its diagonals. For example, the square matrix, um, by the way, square matrix, I want to check something. Who here is good at math? When they say square matrix, do they mean like a 3 by 3 matrix, or does it mean like a 3 by 3 only, or does it mean 4 by 4 matrix? I'm just curious.
We have Lavuyo.
Yes.
I think it's a 3 by 3 matrix, but it's a two-dimensional array.
Two-dimensional array. Okay, so my assumption then for this problem is 3 by 3 matrix. That's my assumption. Okay, thanks, Luvuyo. So, all right. So square matrix is shown below. And then, okay, so now they're giving us an example. So they say that we need to calculate the absolute difference between the sums of its diagonals. So diagonals meaning like that and like that, right? So from the left to right diagonal, it's 1, 5, and 9. And the right to left diagonal is 3, 5, and 9. Now, and then, okay, so then once we get the sum of the diagonals, we need to calculate the absolute difference, right? So absolute difference, it basically means that we cannot have a negative integer, not integer, a negative value. Yeah, Luvuyo, you're good at math. Konje, integers include negative numbers, right? Anyone, please confirm. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Integers, integer. Okay, yeah, let's assume I'm correct. So absolute difference means that we cannot return a negative value. It always has to be positive. That's why we're using absolute difference. And then diagonal difference function following parameter. So, okay. So this is going to be an array, an integer array, and n and m, a 2D array of integers. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, so we'll have to console. We'll have to use console. But the gist that I'm getting is that we're gonna receive an array. Now I just want to understand what kind of an array this is gonna be. It seems like it's gonna be a nest, yeah. Might be a nested array. Okay, so we return the absolute difference. Okay, fine. So now let's look at an example. So we have array with the length of 3. Okay. Oh, yeah. I see now. So, okay. So we have an array of length 3, né? Length 3 meaning we have 3 elements in the array. This is the first element, the second, and the third, right? So yeah, sort of like a nested array. And then basically what we have to do now, when you look at it like this, we don't know what's the diagonals, but when we look at it like this, we know. So if we have to sum 11, 5, and minus 12, which is 11, 5, and minus 12 here. And then this is left to right. So when we go right to left, it's going to be 4, 5, and 10. Okay, this is an interesting problem. Very interesting indeed. Alrighty, and then yeah, so they're showing us to sum, they're showing us to sum, and then the difference. All right. So I'm not gonna log the array inside of our code because we already know what it looks like here. This is interesting. And when I mean interesting, I mean yeah. Okay. Um, why am I shouting? Let's have left to right sum. And let's have right to left some variable. And then let's have, okay, so we need to iterate over this, the outside loop, right? So if we iterate this first time, it's going to give us this element right here. Now, obviously, now we have an array, so we're going to have to loop through the second array, right? Or rather the inner array. So that means we have a situation where we have to use a double loop, or rather a nested loop. So nested loop to iterate over elements. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but okay. And then we're gonna sum. Then we're gonna sum. Okay. Okay. So the first step is in a declare variable. And then let's have our outer loop 0, and then we'll say the okay. Array dot length I plus plus. So I'm guessing if we log this, it should give us these, right? It should give us these. Okay. So okay. And then now we need to get inside of these now. We need to get inside of the inner array. So we're gonna use for loop again. And then this time I'm gonna say j is equals to that is 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, then no. Okay, so let me initialize this. And then I'll have j j should be less than array dot length. And let me just get my thoughts out. I'll explain this. I'll explain to you what's going on. And then okay, let me make sure what's going on now. Array I j ij. Remembers those fish fingers, ij. What a life. INJ. Sorry, 11. Oh, we have 11. Then we have 2. Then we have 4. And then we have 4, 5, 6. And then we have minus 12. We're gonna need minus 12. Okay. Let me see something. Mm, ngishayeleni isandla. Okay, I think I get what's going on now. So 11 plus 5 is what? 16, huh? 11 plus 5 is 16, and then minus 12 is what? 4. Yeah. So we're getting 4 like here. Okay, now let me explain my thinking. So for the left to right, what's going on is we're gonna iterate over the initial array, right? And then obviously, as you know, we set it to 0 because we want to set it to the first element. And then we ensure array pass array.length. We ensure that I is not less than, or rather I is always less than array.length. And then we increment, right? Then we have a second loop. So this second loop right here is going to target the elements inside of the inner array, right? As you have seen. So now, because I want this to happen diagonally, right? I want it to be 11 plus 5 plus 12. Now, as you can see, there's some sort of pattern right here. This is the first element of the inside array. And then we're targeting the second element inside of the second array, inside the initial array. And then we're targeting the third element of the third, inside the third array of the initial array. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm saying is that left to right sum, right? Plus equals to. So now this is 0. Initially this is 0. So we're gonna start with if I is 0, if I is 0, meaning we're targeting this, and then j is equals to I. So because I is 0, that means j now is gonna be 0, right? So it's gonna be I0, j0, which means we're targeting when I is 0, we're targeting this. And then when j is 0, we're targeting that. So we get 11, right? So now the first, so now left to right sum is now 11. Then we say break. The reason why I'm saying break is because I have to exit this. I'm exiting this loop. Why am I exiting this loop? Because I don't want to add 2 and 4 to left sum because I don't want 2 and 4, right? So once I got this, I exit the loop. And then I go back to the initial loop where now I is 1. And then I is 1. And then now I is 1. Now we're going to execute this. So now J is going to be 1 because I is 1. Now since J is 1, then we go here to the left and right. So now remember now this is 11. This is 11, right? So now we say array when the index is 1 and then J is 1. So what does this mean? So when I is 1, we are targeting this. And then when J is 1, we are targeting this. So now it becomes 11 plus 5, right? It's 16, right? And then we break because we don't want to continue iterating over this. So we exit and then we go back here. So I is now 2, and then 2 is still less than 3. So now j becomes, now j is initialized to 2, right? And then since j is 2, then this is going to be 2 and 2, right? So now left to sum at this point is 16. So when we say array, when we say I is 2, we're targeting this. And j is 2, that means we're targeting that. So now it becomes 16 minus 12, and then that becomes 4, right? And then we break. So that means we exit this. And then now, because now at this point I is 3, 3 is not less than 3. So now this condition is not met, we exit. And then we have our left to right sum, which is now 4. Now we need to get right to left after doing all of that. Let's go. So we gonna have a so when we have to go 4, 5, 10. So we're gonna have to go 4, 5, and 10. So 4, 5, and 10. So this basically means that for the I, we are going forward. We are looping, we're iterating forward, right? So for the I, so that means I has to be 0. I has to be initialized at 0. So we're gonna iterate going forwards like this, like ga, ga, ga. But now, because this one, it starts here, and then it goes there, and then it goes there, it's kind of like we're looping the second loop backwards. I don't know if that makes sense, because if you check it, 4 is the last element of the first array. 5, and then 5 is the second element of the second array. And then 10 is the first element of the third array. So it kind of means like what the clue that this gives us, that j, we have to loop j backwards now. So if we have to go backwards, then that means we cannot initialize j to I. We cannot initialize j to I. So j will probably have to be 2. We have to initialize j at 2. But let's say we don't know that the array length is 3. So we're gonna have to work out a formula to initialize j. So that means that kind of how do you go backwards in an array? Kind of it's I think it's array dot length minus 1. Let me just console log that just to make sure. And this one throws hands. It's a thinker. 2. All right, yeah, 2. So that means that we're gonna, it's kind of like we start from here, and then instead of incrementing j, we're gonna have to decrement. So that's why it will be this, and then this, and then this. Okay. Okay. So I'll just name this variable And then I'll say for loop. And so remember the I, since the outer loop is looping forward, that means it's incrementing. So we'll initialize it to I, then we'll say array dot length, and then we'll say I plus plus, no? And now because J, which is the inner arrays, to iterate over them, we have to go backwards. So I'll say J formula, and then I'll say J. So I'll say J is or greater or equals to 0, and then I'll say J minus minus. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that J, remember that this is 2 now. J is equals to, so we're going to initialize J to 2, so it's going to start from 2, and then you're going to say that J2 is less, or rather the J should always be less or, I mean, greater or equals to 0, right? And then we're going to decrement. So it's going to go from 2, 1, and 0. And that's it, right? But why? Let me do that. Yeah. Let me just console log here and just see what's going on. Two, one, two, one, two, one. One, two, one, two, one. Add it. 210, 210, 210. Okay, looks right. Now, let's have our let's sum our right to left diagonal, right? So I'll say right to left is equals to 1 plus equals to plus equals to array I and j, right? And then don't forget our break. Why? Because once we get this, we break. Once we get that, we break. We don't go backwards again. Once we get this, we break. Once we get that, we're done, right? Now let me log, see if we're getting the right value. Minus 2. Console log what's happening inside here. Number 4, 5, 10. Two. Okay. Let me explain. So, okay. So, I is going to be, let me see. So I is 0, right? So again, we're going forward, right? So now J is 2 because of this formula right here, right? So now J is 2 minus 1. Now, why is it 2 minus 1? If we say 2 minus 0, that means initially now J is going to be 0 when I is 0. I mean, J is going to be 2 when I is 0, right? And then 2 is greater than, 2 is greater or equals to 0. And then that's true, right? So now our first, because now J is 2 and I is 0, that means we're targeting this because I is 0 and J is 2, so we're targeting 4, right? So now right to left so right to left is now 4, and then we break. And then we break, and then now I is 1, and then so 2 minus 1 is 1, right? And then 1 is still greater and equals to 0. So now I is 1, J is 1. So when I is 1, then when J is 1, we're targeting 5. We're getting 5. So 4 plus 5 is 9. So right to left now is 9. And then I increments, I becomes 2. Then since formula here is 2, 2 minus 2 is 0, right? So J now is 0, and then J is greater or equals to 0. Yes, it's still true. And then, so now I is 2, J is 0. So when I is 2, we're targeting this array. And then when J is 0, we're targeting this. So now it becomes 9 plus 10, which is 19, and then we break. Hence, we have 19 here. So, okay, I think now, let me see according to the example. Okay, we need to get, so now let's do this. Let absolute difference is equals to, we're gonna use math dot ABS. Math.abs. So we'll say that left minus right, right? And then return abs def. So what is this? This math.abs 6-pack is a JavaScript built-in method, right? And that basically returns the absolute value of a number, right? Simple. So when we run our code, we pass our first test. Now let us submit the code. Oh, thank God. And then we pass everything, right? So now this code is very ugly, very, very ugly. So let's do some refactoring, right? Let me just let me comment this. So now when we refactor, we're using two nested loops. We're executing two nested loops, which is this and this. This is heavy. This is heavy on the memory, right? So we're gonna write it to be more easier and more readable and more understandable. So okay, we have to loop. We have to iterate. I array.length, and then take off my jacket. And then Let's do that. If we say array I, let's say left to right is equals to Mhm. 11, 16, 4, which is 4. Okay, so what am I doing here? Left to right is 0, right? Is 0. So now array, when I is 0, we're targeting this, and then I is 0 again, we're targeting that, right? So we get 11, right? Then exit the loop. Now I is 1. So I is 1, I is 1, I is 1. What are we targeting? We're targeting 1, and we're targeting 1, right? We're targeting this. And then again, so we got our 5, and then we exit the loop. Okay, we don't exit the loop, but now I is 2. So this is 2, and this is 2. So we're targeting when I is 2 and when I is 2, right? Here, when I is 2. And therefore we get our left, right? Now, our right is going to be more complicated, but let's follow the same template. So we'll say array I, and then we'll say array dot length, that formula of ours there, because we have to go backwards. So yeah, and then we'll say -1 minus I. So basically, this condition that we used here. And then what I think should happen here, we're targeting the last index and then going backwards, right? So when I is 0, we start here, and then array.length, which is 3 minus 1 is 2 minus I is 0. So this is 2. Then we're targeting this. And then again, when I is 1, and then array, this is what, 2, and then 2 minus 1, we get that. We're targeting this, etc., etc. So let me remove that, and then let's run our code and see. Okay, submit code. And then we are done. So we refactored our diagonal difference. So you can see, look at the difference right here. How many lines of code is this? That's about what, 14? And then here we just have like 6, if I'm not mistaken. And that is the beauty of refactoring. But do not be despaired if you cannot refactor or optimize. It takes a lot of practice, and obviously you have to know what you're doing. When I first started out in HackerRank, obviously this part of the problem solving, which is optimizing, I don't know how many, took me. And obviously does not mean that I'm perfect now, but it takes time to learn how to optimize code, and therefore you need to practice, 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 right? For now, let's take a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, we're gonna do some more hack ranking solving. So, Matlatsi, what time should we be back?
They can be back at 10:50 because I also launched some poll questions for them to answer.
Okay, okay. I'll see you guys in 8 minutes. Ciao.
It's 10:50 right now, and by a show of hands, who's back? Who's back? Who's back? Who's back? Seems like a lot of people are still not back. All right, all right, all right. Caesar, are you back? You good?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm good.
Okay, you good. Okay. I guess we can now proceed.
Okay.
Back
No
to you, Caesar.
All right. Uh, hmm. For now, I think that I think I'm just gonna do one more example, and then the next example, I'm just gonna give it to everyone, for them to do. Just to see if maybe they see and understand what's going on here. And hopefully they are starting to see like a pattern of, what do we do when we want to iterate, when we want to check conditions, and how we manipulate arrays, etc., etc., right? So, okay, since we took 8 minutes, I'm just gonna read over this problem. So, given an array of integers, calculate the ratios of its elements that are positive, negative, and zero. Print, given an array of integers, calculate the ratios of its elements. Oh, okay, okay, okay. Then print the decimal value of each fraction on a new line with six places after the decimal. All right, all right, all right. I think I get it. Note, this challenge introduces precision problems. The test cases are scaled to 6 decimal places, though answers with absolute error of up to whatever that means, 0.00004. I don't know how many fours there are, but yeah, are acceptable. So this is a small margin of error, a small margin of error. So yeah, so now as you are reading the problem and you're taking notes, you need to highlight what they want. So they say calculate the ratios of its elements that are positive, negative, and zero. And then print decimal of each fraction on a new line, with 6 decimal places. So each answer on every line must have 6 decimal places. All right, so as an example, we have an array 1, 1, 0, -1, -1, and there are 5 elements, 2 positive, 2 negative, and 1 0. So since we have 2 positives, now we calculate the ratio of those positives. So 2 divided by 5 is equals to this, 0, wara, wara, wara. And then we're returning 6 decimal places, right? So this is the ratio of positives, and then the ratio of negatives, and then the ratio of 0. So we have 1 0 out of 5, da 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 da. It's basically, if I'm not mistaken, like calculating the average, but without adding percentage. I may be wrong, but for me to understand this, I think that's what's happening. And then, okay, print ratios, positive, negative, 0 values in the array. Each value should be printed on a separate, okay, covered that. And then, okay, the example here. So here, let me just hide that. We have what? How many negatives we have? We have 2 negatives. So it's going to be 2 divided by 6. Then we get that. And then how many positives we have? We have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 positives. So 3 divided by 6. And then we have 1 0 value. So 1 over 6. I think, yeah, I think this is for positive, this is for negative, and this is for zero. So they say that we need to print, so the order is print positive ratios, negatives, and then zero. Okay. Okay. All right. So it's confirmed that our parameter is going to be parameter value will be an array, right? So I guess the first step is to get the total of positives, negatives, and zeros. And then loop, iterate through the array. And then, okay. So now I have to compare. So if I'm going to compare, I'll use an if statement to check if element is greater than zero. If so, have a counter. So meaning that okay. And then oh, I thought I'll have a counter variable, but that is fine because I'll just use these variables for my as my counters, right? Now basically do the same for okay, now I need to check if element is greater than zero. Now I need to do the same for the negatives and the zeros. So elements less than zero and equal to zero. What's next? So once I get these totals, then what I need to divide? Divide totals. So let's declare positives. Actually, we can call it total positives. Total negatives and the total zeros equals to zero. And then next step, loop through the array. Okay, so we're gonna have a for loop. Array dot length and plus plus. Then we say if okay, check if statement to check if the element is greater than zero, if so increment. So if array I is greater than zero, then we add to total positives plus plus like that. So we're incrementing positives, right? Then we have an else if statement to say that if array is less if array is less than zero, which is the negatives. Then total negatives plus plus like that. Then if all these conditions fail, so if this is false and this is false, it means that we have a zero. So we zero total zeros plus plus increment total zeros, right? And then we are not done. Let's console log and see if we're doing the right thing. So let's total negatives, total positives, and total zeros. I'll just give it a message of total. Hmm? Zero, zero, zero. Oh, I'll see you. So we have two negatives, three positives, and one. Okay. So we're not done. The next step is to get the ratios, right? So actually forgot the step, man. So let's positives ratio. Let negatives ratio equals to zero, and then let zeros ratio equals to zero now. And then here I'm just gonna reinitialize positives ratio to total positives divide by array dot length, right? And then negatives ratio is equals to total negatives divide by array dot length, and then zeros ratio is equals to total zeros divided by array dot length, right? Actually, okay, fine. Then we can console log this. Okay, Mara-ish. It's need on a new line. So I'll just say positives ratio dot to fixed, right? So we're using to fixed to calculate to 6 decimal places, right? So we're using to fixed. So number of digits after the decimal point, right? And then let's copy and paste this for the other ratios, which is for the negatives and then for the zeros. Like that, let's run our code, see what's going on. Okay, we're passing our provisional test cases. Then let's submit code. Okay, so the code is working, right? Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Now let us refactor this bad boy or bad girl or bad they. Uh, comment it out. Uh, I'm going to use Mm, 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 mm. Mm, 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 mm. I'm gonna comment my variables and let me say total positives, right? I'm gonna say array dot filter. And then I'm gonna have element as my what's this parameter here, and I'm going to say element is because it's positive is greater than 0. So what am I saying here? Uh before I lie, let me see what's going on. I want to remove everything that's not positive. Mhm. So all of that I do in just one line of code. Imagine that. So what am I doing here? I have a filter method, right, which we spoke about yesterday. And then I'm passing a callback function inside it. And then inside the callback, basically I have a parameter of element, right? So what element is basically it's the element inside the every element inside the array. So what filter does basically it iterates through the array and then it checks. So this is element, this is element, this is element, this is element, and this is an element, right? So what it checks is element is greater, uh element is greater than 0, right? So yes, 1 is greater than 0, return it. 1 is greater than 0, return it. 0 is greater than 0, nope, filter it out. -1 is greater than 0, filter it out. -1 is greater than 0, filter it out, right? But now, and then, so now for here, for this example, we're going to have two positives. And then now, because filter returns a new array, so total positives now is big at this point, nah? At this point, total positives is a new array with filtered out values. So we only have positive values here. And then I say dot length, and then the length of it is whatever length of positive values that are there. So for example, if we have for this example, since we have 1, 2 positive values, the length is going to be 2. Then we're going to say length, the length of this new array divide by the array length or the original array length. So it's 2 divided by what is this? 5. All right. So now let's use the example that we're doing. So this is our array. we have minus 4, 3, minus 9, 0, 4, 1. And then when we're filtering, everything that is not positive, we remove, right? And then we're just returning the values that are positive, right? And then on this new array, we get the length of this new array. And what does this new array contain? It contains 3, 4, 1. So the length of the new array is 3. And then we divide 3, the length of the new array, with the length of the original array. So it's going to be 3 divided by 6. And then 3 divided by 6 will give us that, right? Injalo, injalo. So now we have total positives. And then here I'm logging the ratio. Here I'll log the ratio right there. So I'm just going to copy and paste this for the negative and the 0 ratio. The condition for negative is less. So return everything that is less, that satisfies this condition. So if element is less than 0, return that element in our new array, etc., etc. And now for 0, for the zeros ratio, return everything that the element, where the element is strictly equals to 0. And then here we're just gonna log all of them. So this is negative. And then let's see if we refactored properly or optimized properly. Okay, submit code. And there we go. We have refactored. Yeah, it's nice writing code like this, but we have to understand really what's going on. And yeah, so I'm just gonna pause there, and if there are any questions, I'm just gonna take questions. I'll ask the rest of the team to help answering these questions also. Matlati.
Okay. By show of hands, who wants to ask a question? Yes, Caesar. They don't want to talk to you. They don't
Yeah.
have any questions. Okay, yes, we're
No,
gonna.
there's actually 3 in the Q&A.
Yeah, I was going there now. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have a question from Solofeto. Hi guys. Is there any way to know that your code can be refactored, or refactoring depends on one's capacity of knowledge?
Yeah, I remember asking that question when I started. It goes with the eye, you know? Sometimes when you're writing the code, you're just writing for the sake of solving the problem, and then you're understanding that the route you're taking is a longer route, you know? You're having if else statements everywhere, you're using a lot of loops, etc. So there may be many answers to this question, but the answer is this. Yes, it depends on one's experience and knowledge. That's why it's very important for you to practice, right? When you start, your code is gonna be ugly, right? But you're obviously gonna happy because it works. I would recommend you don't stop there. figure out how to refactor. And somewhere in HackerRank, I just forgot where, you can actually look at solutions of other developers in the same who did the same problem. And then when you do that, is you basically doing research and you're basically seeing how other people approach the problem. So you see that other people have a slightly or rather significant approach to your problem, and then you'll see that how they also refactor their code. So some will see, oh, here they use the filter function, and now I went and used a for loop. Okay, but we're doing the same thing because we're looping through the array, etc. And then when you start doing that, you start putting yourself in a position where you think like other developers, or rather, you think outside of the box. You're not constrained into your own way of doing things. So one is experience. Yes, it's experience. And sometimes when you just run your code, you see that your code is a bit slower, or it's not, it's very slow, and sometimes does not pass certain test cases. So if you have a large array and it could be 20,000, it could have a length of 20,000 or whatever, then you'll see that in your code you are using nested loops, you are using a lot of loops. Then at that point, then you have to realize that, okay, my code is breaking because I have a large array, and because of the code that I wrote, it's not optimized, so it cannot solve the problem. So I need to refactor or optimize the code. So um, yeah. For now, I'll just say experience and if there are issues in your code. Yeah. What's the maybe?
Another one.
Yeah, another one.
Okay. You have a question from Nyakalo. Okay, is HackerRank going to help me become professional, or is it going to help with problem solving?
Both. Capital BOAF. Both. So actually, I don't know why. I don't understand the question to that problem, because problem solving is professional anyway. You're gonna have to solve problems when you are at a workplace. But let me answer you. For you to get there, first of all, you need to know how to problem solve, right? In CodeTribe, in CodeTribe, uh, CodeTribe is JavaScript intense, you know? So if you don't have a deep or a good understanding of JavaScript, when we start doing things like Node.js and React, and you don't understand these things, are you gonna cry? So, for example, in in React, we use the map method a lot. Like, so you'll have data of about 60, 100, or 20,000 items in that array. And then obviously you don't want to write a for loop for that. So you use a map function to modify those elements inside the array, right? And if you don't understand how to use a map function, when you start doing React and you start seeing code that has map, obviously you're gonna get like, oh, huh? What is this? What is that? So HackerRank basically it helps you with your foundation to solidify your foundation in JavaScript, right? And it helps you on your way to becoming a professional. The second part of that answer is that the nice thing about HackerRank is it also helps you to prepare for interviews. Besides problem solving, it helps you prepare for interviews. So in some interviews, especially technical interviews, they won't ask you what's your tech stack, what's a function in JavaScript. No, they're just gonna give you a laptop, and then they're gonna say solve this problem. Don't use ChatGPT. You can use Google to research, but don't use ChatGPT. Don't copy and paste. Don't copy code, and then they record your screen to see if you don't use ChatGPT and all of that. And now what you're doing is you're showing that company your problem-solving skills, right? So that is one thing also that helps with it. So overall, to answer your question, it's just going to make you a better developer and code writer and problem solver in a nutshell.
All right, thank you, Sizwe. Joseph had a question for you, but he figured it out. So I'm going to just move on to Alec. Is it allowed to use a loop inside the loop?
Hmm?
Is it allowed to use a loop inside the loop?
It depends what kind of problem you're solving. But yes, nested loops are a thing.
All right. I think there was a hand up, but that person put that hand down. Okay, Luvuyo. Yes, Luvuyo.
Yes, ma'am. I just have a question for Sizwe. Okay, so we're doing JavaScript right now. Would you say JavaScript is the core foundation of a web developer's programming, or in terms of the logic that's being used, or are there other languages like React that you mentioned also using logic? And is JavaScript the hardest one, or is this still light waters?
First of all, Mr. Luvuyo, first of all, I don't like how you call Matlatsi ma'am and you just call me Sizwe. Like if you have beef with me, just give me address, we'll hash it out. But anyway, to answer your question, generally JavaScript is considered the go-to when it comes to when we talk about web development, right? So React is not a language, it's a JavaScript library, right? So its syntax it's heavily JavaScript. So um we have libraries such as React, Angular, and Vue, if I'm not mistaken, right? Now every company uh they choose if they want to use React, Angular, or Vue, or all of them, depending on the problem that they're solving. So if you're coming in and you don't have the basics in JavaScript and you just move on to React, that's also cool. That's fine. But you won't be scalable as such as a dev because you only know React, you don't know the basis of JavaScript. And even when you're coding in React, some of the things or the logic that is written by either your colleagues or yourself, it won't make sense. And it's going to take a long time for you to solve problems in React because you don't understand the logic side of it or the problem solving. I'll give you an example. Um, say that you have an API and then you need to consume data from that API. Now, the data that you have, you don't want the entire thing. You just want um, specifics. Maybe you want the name and the address only. When you're on React, the client side, you're gonna have to know how to manipulate that data. And that data manipulation often requires logic like this, which this logic you learn in things like HackerRank. You know how to manipulate data and stuff and stuff and stuff. So when you move on to React, you don't have to worry about the logic side of it. You just need to learn about components, props, and all of that shebang, state management and all. You don't have to worry about the problem solving side. So once you've mastered JavaScript on its own, the logic side and problem solving in JavaScript, it will be easy. It will be very easy. Okay, not very easy, but it will be easy for you to learn React and do React, learn Angular and do Angular, learn Vue and do Vue. So then you I don't want to say hot commodity. I don't want to lie to you, but whatever language or library that you are told to learn, you'll be able to learn it very quickly because you already mastered, okay, not mastered, but you already know how to write the logic and are familiar with the JavaScript syntax and you know what callbacks are and all of that. So yeah, Luvio,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Thank you, Luvuyo. Okay, we'll take a question from Anonymous. How many operators have you used in this lesson?
How many operators?
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate.
He just said how many operators did you use? Anonymous, can you please raise your hand up and then you can elaborate on this. I don't know if Anonymous will raise their hand. Okay, I guess we'll move on to another question. Alec, can one apply all these JavaScript lessons to convert from being a dev to QA/automation test engineer?
Hmm. I'm not very familiar about what they do. Maybe one of the facilitators will answer this, but I'll be honest, I don't want to lie. I don't like answering questions I don't know answers to. I'm not really familiar with what QAs do. So if anyone on the chat is, maybe they might shine light on that.
All right. Okay, thank you for that, Caesar. Does anyone want to try? Anyone wants to try and answer Alec? Okay. It seems as if like no one wants to answer or no one has an answer. Okay, let's go for Tsolofetso because Loboyo was speaking now. We can move on to Tsolofetso, yes? Tsolofetso, we can't hear you if you're speaking. All right, we can move on to Luvuyo. Luvuyo, please unmute on your side.
Oh no, I didn't have my hand up.
Okay.
Hey, Luvuyo, me, I was joking. I'm not gonna throw hands with you. Hey, I was joking.
It doesn't even want to talk anymore.
Hey, I was joking. Hey, bengdlala. Hey, yeah, we'll.
Tsolofetso's mic doesn't work. Okay, Karabo. Yes, Karabo.
Good day, ma'am. Good day, Mr. Caesar.
Yes.
Sir.
Uh,
Good day, sir.
so the question, Leada Alec.
Yeah.
So definitely the JavaScript lessons are going to help. No matter you're a dev, no matter you're an automation tester, understanding coding, it's critical when it comes to testing and developing because now you understand how to solve different coding problems. So whatever, not whatever, but the lessons that we are doing are going to extremely help us in um, understanding our careers and development. As long as it has to deal with coding, we have to understand how JavaScript works, how other programming languages works. Thank you.
Karabo, thanks for that one. I didn't even know that, but yeah. And Karabo, maybe to ask a further question. Are you aware of unit testing and what's that other one? It's unit testing, integration testing, and I forgot the other one. Are you aware of those?
I'm not certainly aware of them because, hey, testing, I'm not into testing. I'm more into developing and solving whatever problem that we have on the table.
Because I know, like with unit testing, you write, so you write the tests, right? And
Yeah.
obviously, if we're using Konje, what is this? I think it's mocha chai. There's jasmine. There's jest. There's jest as well. So you basically write code to test functions, right? So if the functions are returning the values that are supposed to be returning. So I guess, and I'm not sure if those testers are classified, those people that write those unit tests and integration tests. I don't know if they classify it as QAs or just testers, but I think what Karabo said basically adds on to that, that you need to have a, what is this? You need to have experience in writing code and understanding code. It's because you are the one that's testing the code. So if you're gonna write logic to test a certain code, obviously you need to know what that code is expected to do, etc., etc. Like the test cases here. There is a code that's been written. I don't know where, but to test if we are the values that we are getting are the expected values. So someone who wrote the tester who wrote that code is obviously someone who understands code and understands what should be printed, etc., etc. I hope maybe that shines some light, or if I confused you more, askis. But yeah, thanks, Karabo.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I guess we can move on to Mxolisi.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, no, I just wanted to add on what Mr. Caesar was saying regarding the testing. So, from what I understand, usually like the unit tests are preferably written by the developers themselves, since it's supposed to test what a specific block of code is doing. And then with system integration testing, it's just self-explanatory, like in that you are trying to integrate two systems. It might be a third-party integration, whatever the case might be. And then there's also user acceptance testing, where then it's usually conducted by the client or business, where they confirm that the what you've built like meets those particular requirements that they said. Right. So if you're into QA, it will be definitely beneficial to be aware of the fundamentals of JavaScript itself, like the frameworks, the testing frameworks that Mr. Caesar spoke about, Jest, Jasmine, and the likes. They become beneficial when you want to step into automation testing as well as QA.
Eh, you guys know stuff, né? You are cooking. Okay, okay, okay. Sure, sure. Thanks, Mxolisi.
Thank you, Mxolisi. Mr. Caesar, you have a question from Alec. What's the logic of writing scripts / code to test other code? Don't developers get maybe test cases to test, debug before deploying?
It depends on the company size. Some companies have the benefit to have testers employed where they write those test cases for you, and when you just write your code and then it's tested against whatever those tests are written, right? Whatever. Sometimes The company does not have that kind of muscle, and basically the dev is the one is going to test that code. So the approach is there's TDD and BDD, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, it's testing, development, something. I forgot what TDD means. But basically, the approach is before you write the code, you write the test first. So the test case will be, I want this function to return A, B, and C. I don't want, um, okay, you say I want this function. Maybe the first test case will be, I want this function to return an integer. However, I don't want this integer to have whatever, you know, or rather, I want this integer not to have negatives, right? No negatives. And then you just write those test cases. Or you write a test case first and then you write something. So basically the approach is write a test case first and then write the code to satisfy the test case and then move on to something. So if we write a test case to say, first test case will be I want to write an integer. Then we go to our function or our code. We write code to return a function, an integer, and then that test case passes. And then we move on. We say, I want this integer not to have any negatives. Then we're going to go back to our function and refactor such that we don't return any negatives. Then ta 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 ta. And then the test case passes. Falabella, just like that. So sometimes you have a team, sometimes you just have one person doing all of that. It depends really on the company's muscle.
Okay, we can now move on to Luvuyo.
Yes, I'm back again. Okay, so since we're asking questions now, I want to know about the designing aspect of any website or in web development. Let's say you want to dabble in front-end development, and now my concern is it's CSS is actually quite hard to master, you know. So do companies in South Africa hire separate UI UX designers, or must you just be good at it?
Again, depends on the company muscle. Some companies have the muscle to hire UX only, UX designer, UI designer. Some companies is just UI, UX, one and the same person. And then you have the devs, right? So if the company has muscle, you have a team, right? In that team, you'll have a UI, UX designer, maybe two, and then you'll have a tech lead, which is a senior dev, and then the rest of the devs, right? And then if there's a tester will be part of the team. So the UI UX are basically the ones that are gonna guide the devs on how to build um the app or the website, right? So the UI will the UX will tell the UI okay, when this button presses, this what must happen, etc., etc. And then the UI designers will then design accordingly to the specs of the UX guys. And then they'll have buttons there. It must be greeny, shiny, whatever. And then pass to the devs. Then the devs code what they see on the Figma design, or rather Figma, Adobe, anything. They code according to what they see on the design. Companies with less muscle, those guys do everything. So they are the UI UX and they are the devs. So unfortunately, some people can do it all and some can't. And because being in software development is such a competitive game market, some people learn everything, they do everything. Why? Because they want to get hired. Now, obviously, when me as the hiring manager, I interview you and you say that you don't know UI UX, right? You're just a dev or a full stack or whatever. Then I say, okay, yeah, that's good, that's good. And then I interview someone else who is UI UX and a dev, right? If I hire you, I need to hire a UI UX designer to help you. But if I hire him, he can do both. I don't need to hire someone else. Does that make sense? So it depends on the company muscle, but some people just learn everything because that helps their chances of getting employed. But the downside to that is you cannot be, or you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So the guy who does UI UX only, that is bread and butter, is obviously going to come up with better designs more than you, who is a jack of all trades, you know? And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, okay, but like in your own experience, from the companies you've worked at, do you think they do hire these UX UI designers?
They do, just that now, um, they do. Depends really how good you are, because some companies really can do without UI UX designers, to be honest. They can do without them. Some companies hire them on a consultation basis. That's why a lot of UI UX designers are either consultants or freelancers. Um, but obviously the big five banks in South Africa, they do hire UI UX designers. Actually, big companies hire UI UX designers. It's the smaller companies that are a problem.
Getting two for the price of one.
Hmm. And then sometimes you'll work for a company where, let's say you applied as a front-end developer. Some way, somehow, you find yourself writing code in backend. And then some way, somehow, you end up being a full stack dev. And then some way, somehow, you are not in a team. You are developing, or rather, you are maintaining the entire app alone. And then some way, somehow, you are a junior dev, but now you are speaking to stakeholders about this app. And you don't have a clue how to speak to stakeholders. So the unfair part about this game is you must be prepared for anything and you must be always willing to learn because they'll throw you in the deep end and you'll quit from company to company saying this is a toxic workspace. But it's not. Every company has its own. Yeah. So, yeah, bruh. Just be ready to learn anything, anytime.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know, Tulufeto's hand has been up. Let's try Tulufeto again. Tulufeto, can you talk on your side? We can't hear you. Okay, we'll move on to Karabo and then I'll read a few more questions and then we can end the session. Karabo,
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
Karabo.
I wanted to actually answer on Luvuyo's question because um it's beneficial, Luvuyo, to understand everything. Understand if you are a developer, you have to understand maybe let's say you're a front-end developer, you have to understand UX design and because those things work together. Those things work together, okay? You have to understand that if lo muntu lo ufuna ukuyenza this graphic user interface and um this graphic user interface is going to be portrayed as this design, you have to understand uh what should this design look like, um how am I going to design this design to look like what the UX and the UI designer have done. Understand? So it's beneficial to understand everything. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter you're a front end. A front end has to understand the back end of things, and a front end has to also understand the the UX and the UI design part. And also, I hear you crying about CSS. It's beneficial to study and understand frameworks. Frameworks helps a lot. I've been struggling with CSS. I've struggled many years with CSS, especially when it comes to Flexbox. But I integrated on learning AMA frameworks, which is Bootstrap, Angular, Vue, you understand? So those frameworks give you like a bit understanding of how you can design your whatever that you want to design using just simpler class names. You understand? Then you should take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah, like Tailwind, also Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Karabo. Okay. We are back to Anonymous season. Anonymous says, my apologies for not being clear about my question. I can see that these comparisons, logical, string, and arithmetic operators, are they all used at the same time, or you kind of have to know what is needed?
You have to know what is needed. So you have to know, first of, that's why when you read the problem, you have to read the problem for understanding. Sometimes you have to jot things down that, hey, what are they actually saying? Sometimes, I don't know if you were aware as I was coding, I got a little bit caught up because I didn't understand, or hey man, what's going on here? So I have to go back to the code and and go back to the problem. So it's a thing of you have to understand that at this point they are requiring us to make use of a comparison operator. At some point, they're requiring us to make use of a logical operator. Like it's a it's something that comes with practice, man. It really comes with practice. That's why to be fair, or to be fair, we could have just done JavaScript in a day. But my approach was, let's start with the basics. What is data types? What are operators, logical operators, comparison operators, etc. So that when we start writing code, you you must be able to tell that, oh, he's trying to compare two values. Okay, so it's comparing comparison operator. Okay. He's lo using logical operators because of A, B, and C. So yeah, unfortunately, it comes with experience and it comes with practice. So yeah, man. Yeah. But hopefully the notes and the videos that I've done will be helpful, and obviously do more research on your side as well. You check. But don't despair, man. The more you practice, the more it's gonna come.
All right. One last question from Alec. Mr. Sizwe, heard you mentioning that it depends on the company where you find an individual doing all the work. Is it possible to do all by yourself apart from expertise, all in one dev, tester, business analyst, product owner, and what about the deadlines? And what will be your title? That person should be smashing serious squabs.
That is funny. That is really funny. Serious waps.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depends on the muscle of the company. So, for example, let's say you're a dev and you're hired by a small company or a startup. They can only afford to pay you 20 grand a month. and they can't afford to hire a lot of people, right? Sometimes you'll find that you are the entire IT department, you alone. I'll give you a small example. Go to LinkedIn right now, search for junior roles, junior front-end dev, junior software engineer, software dev, whatever. Look at look at the requirements. It's a whole IT department, right? Now, some companies don't require you to know all of that. They just require you to know one or two or three things. But some companies really, really, because they don't have the resources to hire more people. They want an entire IT department from you alone, and they're not willing to pay top rand for that. So, because the situation that we are in SA, actually the whole world, you will take it because you are hungry and you want experience also. You will just take the job and hustle and do what you can to um keep the boat afloat. But if you're thinking big guaps, forget it, bro. Even sometimes I think the people that get big guaps don't even do that much work. Sometimes. But yeah.
All right. I guess that's about it from our Q&A session. Thank you, Caesar, for today's session. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
When is
thank
our
you.
next session?
Mhm.
When was our next session?
It's on the 11th, which is Friday.
Okay.
Yes.
Uh, okay. I think that probably this is the time to have a task. Uh, okay. Since tomorrow we're not meeting, we will set or rather give the task probably later on the day, and then you'll have the rest of tomorrow to work on the tasks. And then Friday morning, Friday morning, we will Friday morning, you guys must submit, nah? And then guys, please submit, hey, like if you're unable to submit, at least communicate prior. Like don't communicate at 9 o'clock that I'm unable to submit. At least send 5 p.m. the day before to say, hey, I'm having challenges, etc., etc. Because now at 9, the submit thing is closed, and then everybody's running around trying to understand why people couldn't submit. So you'll have the whole day tomorrow, guys, and make use of it. Even last week, you had the whole weekend, and some people still couldn't submit. So I put it to you guys to be responsible adults, be responsible professionals, and make sure you submit on time. So yeah, later today, we're gonna release the task for JavaScript, and then you'll have to submit Friday morning, and then Friday morning we're just gonna add on to what Glozy and Nokwanda did. So yeah, we're gonna do that. And then we'll have a task later on that day, and then you have the whole weekend. When is next week? Do you have a session on Monday?
No, we have a session again next week on the 16th.
So how
Your
long?
your sessions end this Friday.
Just kidding. Yeah. So what I just wanted to find out was how long can I make the task Friday? So the weekend, do
Yeah,
they need
I think the more they practice, the better. The more they code, the better. So they can just submit on Monday, at 9. So yeah,
You're not understanding me.
okay.
The task for what we've did so far for
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript, nah?
Mm-hmm.
We're releasing it later today.
Yes, correct.
So let's just say that that one is due on Friday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Then then Friday we have a lesson, and then the task that will be released later on Friday, they will have the weekend to do it. So basically, what I'm asking, the task for Friday, when should it be due?
Monday. Let's give them the whole weekend.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
All right.
Cool. That's it from my side. Thank you guys. Please also use HackerRank. Um, yeah, use it, use it, use it. Sure. Thanks.
Um, Thank you to everyone who joined. The next task will be sent to you later on today, as well as the invitation for the next session, which will be on the 11th of April. And then please do submit on time. Please do not come up with any excuses, because at the end of the day, we check back to what you managed to do throughout the boot camps, so that we can make the final decision when we have to like intake people as part of Code Tribe, right? So make sure that you submit on time or before that, right? And then yeah, I'll see you in the next session. Um, please wait for communication. I will send communication later on today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.